Jose Huizar. I'm joined today by Councilmember Greg Smith. This is the Public Works Committee. We will get this meeting started. We're going to continue 2 items, and we're going to take one out of order. We'll continue item number 1 and item number 3. Number 3, we had LAPD that had to be pulled away to another matter, and they wanted to be present to talk about that item. So we have before us item 2, 4, and 5, and we will take item number 5 up first. We have Councilwoman Perry who would like to address us on this issue.
Item number 5, Board of Public Works report relative to authorization to negotiate a Department of Public Works project labor agreement and related public infrastructure stabilization ordinance. This matter was considered by the Jobs and Business Development Committee on June 22nd, 2010.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm also joined by John Reamer from the Bureau of Contract Administration, should you have questions, and Dick Slauson is also here on my far right. I'm pleased to be able to have this opportunity to ask for your support regarding the Public Infrastructure Stabilization Ordinance. This ordinance will fully complement the forthcoming citywide project labor agreement and will codify local hire and the use of apprentices on city-funded public works projects, and the citywide project labor agreement will establish these specific terms. The project labor agreement will expire 5 years after execution. However, the ordinance will require local hire on public works in perpetuity. In July 2009, I introduced a council motion asking the Bureau of Contract Administration and the Office of the City Attorney to work together on developing a public infrastructure stabilization ordinance, and after a long period of time, we're here today. I believe that this project, the project labor agreements for the city-sponsored public works projects make sense because they help us put local residents to work on city projects, and they get apprentices on the job and bring meaningful employment opportunities to city residents. Finally, the project labor agreements help us deliver quality buildings on time and within budget to the public, and I can tell you firsthand that the 9th Council District has been the beneficiary of a number of those projects, most recently the police administration building. And the stabilization ordinance would require city-funded public works projects to hire at least 30% of local city residents. The ordinance would then require that 10% of the 30% of local residents meet at least one of the following criteria for a disadvantaged worker: where the household income falls below 50% of the area median income, person who would be defined as homeless without a permanent home, a recipient of public assistance, or some history of involvement in the justice system, the unemployed or single worker. If adopted, this ordinance would assist in providing meaningful employment to people who need a second chance. And not only will this help us put local people to work, but it will level the playing field for all contractors doing work with the Department of Public Works. Specifically, the city currently requires all contractors to pay workers prevailing wage, which is the same rate as union wages. To be very clear, adoption of the ordinance will not raise cost for city contracts or expenses for contractors. However, the ordinance will establish a binding relationship between the city and the contractor to ensure local hire and use of apprentices. Public works projects have a state-mandated 20% apprenticeship utilization requirement, and this ordinance will provide the city with the tool it needs to enforce it. I am very passionate about this, and we have worked a very, very long time, and I think that this effort will advance the skills of our local labor pool, especially young people or people returning back to work. And so I would just like to ask the committee to move forward to council and give us your consideration today in affirming the work we have done here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Perry. I was going to go to staff for a brief presentation unless there's any questions or comments. Ms. Perry? No? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Perry. And if we could have a brief presentation from staff on this item, and then we'll go to public comment.
Good morning, Councilmember John Reamer, the Director of the Bureau of Contract Administration. Councilmember Perry did an excellent job in presenting to you what we're here for. The Public Infrastructure Stabilization Ordinance is for the purpose of ensuring that when we do projects, specifically construction projects in the Department of Public Works, that we are able to utilize a tool known as a project labor agreement that ensures a number of things. Projects are delivered timely, they're delivered with good quality construction, they're done safely, and more importantly, council has communicated to the Department of Public Works a desire to have a solid apprenticeship program. We looked around to see what tool would best enable us to do that. The project labor agreement is a tool that enables us to partner with the LA Orange County Building Trades. That partnership brings with it a training mechanism for us to provide men and women who live in the city of Los Angeles an avenue, if you will, into the building trades, so that they don't just get a job, but they have a career where they're trained properly on how to do construction in all the trades. We've been doing this in the Department of Public Works since 2000, where we've had over 14 project labor agreements. To date, we've realized over 32% of all the hours worked. They have been worked by men and women who come from the city of Los Angeles. It's been a phenomenal success relationship, if you will. So when I look at the Infrastructure Stabilization Ordinance as a title, we often refer to brick and mortar from the standpoint of building in the city of Los Angeles. This does not just focus on building projects, but it also focuses on restoring and building lives by providing an opportunity. So we welcome this opportunity, and we certainly hope that you will support this.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to public comment. We have one public comment card. Richard Schlosson, welcome.
Good afternoon, council members, Chairman Weezar. I'm Richard Slauson, the Executive Secretary of the Los Angeles and Orange Counties Building and Construction Trades Council, and we are here, and some of my fellows are here today to support this Stabilization Ordinance to help move it forward to the full City Council for a final vote. You may know that we're in the middle of discussions presently for the negotiation of a project labor agreement, and once that is complete, this ordinance will implement that agreement and allow us to move forward together. Working together, the City of Los Angeles, the building trades, crafts, and the contractors that have built these projects have provided the city with great projects, more than 30% local hiring overall, and a large economic return on the projects that have been done under project labor agreements thus far. These agreements level the playing field, bring more contractors to the table to bid these projects, and provide economic sense and good labor relations policies for everyone involved. We hope you support this and move the project forward today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Smith?
No, this is going to make it easier for us to do this in the future. You said we've done it 14 times with Public Works. I know Ms. Perry negotiated a similar one with Staples and LA Live. So this is a standard way of doing business right here. This is going to make it easier to do that, right?
Correct.
That's good. Okay.
Thank you, and certainly I saw the benefits when I was at the school district where we pushed forward a PLA and stabilization agreement there, and it worked well with us. We had a stable workforce, something we could rely on, and it was convenient when issues did arise, so we saw the benefits there, and one of the largest public works programs in the country at the time. So I think this is, we must continue in this direction here as well.
That agreement has a great record as well, in that 37% local hire has been the average over 12 years, and 65% from Los Angeles County. So
Okay, great.
it's done its job.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. With the concurrence of Mr. Smith, we'll forward this item to full council. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, also just to let you know, on this, there's not a prepared ordinance by the city attorney, so as part of the council instruction, we'd have to request the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance.
Let's do that then. We'll ask, this went through Jobs and Committee, their action was the same?
Their action, they also did an amendment to instruct the Bureau of Contract Administration that the finished project labor agreement to come back to council for approval. They also wanted that, apparently.
Okay, there's some clarification from Mr. Reamer.
You should have a draft ordinance already submitted.
But this is not a proper ordinance for the city attorney hasn't signed
We
it.
have one here.
It's not signed to lead
It's just a
formality.
Your recommendation is what? Because we do have a draft one.
Yeah, but that's not a proper ordinance for
Not signed as formal legality.
normally there's a separate transmittal for the office.
City attorney's here. You want to give us some...
Yeah, Ted Jordan, Assistant City Attorney, Public Works General Counsel. When I looked in the record, it reflects a draft ordinance that says draft across. Hasn't been approved as to form and legality. I'm not the one that's personally been involved in that ordinance, so I cannot say at this time whether or not that is one that we would be prepared to sign as to form and legality. Typically, we wouldn't get you an ordinance in that form from our office unless we were at that point already.
So what do you suggest we do? Should we send this back to the city attorney's office?
No, my understanding is that this, but I mean, what we're talking about here is the negotiation of the PLA.
You have, Councilmember, you have two things in place. We do have the draft, but we also have, in parallel with that, the negotiations with the building trades themselves. And what we were asked, the Jobs Committee, was to, in parallel with this, bring with us the fully negotiated, but 99.9% fully negotiated project labor agreement, so council would have an opportunity to speak to that. So I would ask that we continue to move forward in that direction. And
We could always approve it here and hold it off the full council agenda until the formal legality notice catches up.
And then allow the negotiations that have been ongoing to finish their process so that that's not going to be
Do that.
interrupted.
Clerk, is that feasible?
I believe that would be fine. We can simply hold it and wait till they present a properly conformed ordinance.
Okay. Let's do that. So,
Can you just direct them to go ahead and look at it and send it on simultaneously? Yeah, go ahead.
can you look at it and send it along with the negotiations simultaneously?
Yeah, I mean,
Or is much going to change? It seems like most of the ordinance is done.
it's done.
It's done,
Yeah.
so...
Yeah.
But you have to get the form signed by the city attorney, so
Yeah.
while we're waiting
Well,
for that, you guys can finish that.
Yeah, we'll send it to council. It'll get calendared whenever everything else is ready, the negotiations, and you look at it for form and legality. So let's forward it to council. We'll work out the timing with negotiations
Great.
and the form and legality from the city attorney. So,
but meanwhile, the negotiations continue.
yeah,
Yes.
let's do
Yeah,
that. We just don't want to, I don't think much is going to change coming back to
No.
committee or going through the process, so we just want to keep it moving forward.
Correct.
Okay,
Great.
so we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next item.
Then we get everything.
Jones.
I'll talk to you guys first.
Next item, number 2.
Item number 2, Board of Public Works report relative to preparation and submittal of requests to the California Coastal Commission for categorical exclusion from the coastal development permit requirements in connection with the coordinated street furniture program.
Welcome. Staff, if you can make a quick presentation, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Smith. My name is Jim Doty. I'm the acting head of the Environmental Management Group in the Bureau of Engineering. It is my group's responsibility to review and administer the city's Coastal Act authority when it pertains to public projects. With me here, I'll have them introduce themselves, or staff from Street Services.
Lance Owishi, Contract Administrator with the Bureau of Street Services.
Shannon Eastonson, Bear Street Services.
We had initially planned that we would be following the general briefing on the program. Since that has been continued, I'd like to start with have Lance give a general description of the Coordinated Street Furniture Program. And good afternoon, Councilman Alarcon.
Once again, good afternoon. Lance Owishi with the Bureau of Street Services. Our Coordinated Street Furniture Program is a 20-year contract that was executed with CBS Deco back in 2001, so it'll run up until 2021. As part of that program, we provide transit shelters, automated public toilets, newsstand vending kiosks, and what we call public amenity kiosks. Total pieces of furniture that would be provided through the program, if fully implemented, would be 2,500 new pieces of furniture. We are currently in the 9th year of the program, and we are here today to seek council authority to once again hopefully get exclusion from the Coastal Act to allow us to continue placement of furniture in the coastal zones of Los Angeles.
And I'd like to briefly address that. The Coordinated Street Furniture Program is implemented in a procedure that involves quite a range of review from stakeholders, including city departments and community stakeholders. It's a citywide program. However, within the coastal zone of the city of Los Angeles, which is a portion of 2 council districts, a question has recently arisen that installation of these street furniture would require a coastal development permit. The Coastal Act has been in place for 30 years plus, and it is only relatively recently that this question has arisen. My office has reviewed the program against the policies of the Coastal Act, and we believe that the program is de minimis with regards to the policies of the California Coastal Act. And in the interests of efficiency, we should formally exclude the program from Coastal Act permit requirements. That's the proposal that's before you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff, and then I'll go to public comment. Any questions, staff?
Have the 2 council members weighed in on this?
We don't have formal comment from either of the 2 council members. They are aware of the proposal.
Are they present? Anybody here representing those 2 offices?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We could probably remain there. Let's have the public speaker come up here to this microphone as we call you up. We have about, I would say about 10 cards. First speaker is Janet Turner. After Janet Turner is James Mudes. Can't understand the writing, but Janet, you could come up here to this microphone right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Janet Turner, and I am chairman.
One moment, please, just to be clear for the public speakers here. You have a 2-minute speaking time, and the clock is up here.
Thank you very much. My name is Janet Turner, and I am chair of the Pacific Palisades Community Council. The city has not prepared a local coastal program, and it has been requested of the city for years and years and years by the Pacific Palisades Community Council. The Coastal Commission has provided us some safeguards as a way for the community to be heard and have an input on the placement of these kiosks. By taking this away with an exemption to the Coastal Commission process, you will be taking away our right to have comment and to maintain our specific plan, which we believe is very important to the beauty of our city. Everyone wants a short-term solution. I'd like you to look at the long-term effect before you make a decision. Every time you junk up a coastal village with these kiosks, you are taking away the value of this desirable town, a town that is a destination spot with tourists coming. According to the PCH task force, 10 million people travel the PCH area through our area. That's a lot of tourist dollars to the city. Right now, Pacific Palisades is a beautiful place, a beautiful destination. We work with the city on these kiosks, and that is what we would like to be able to continue to do, is to have a say as to where they're going to be, so that it will stay a beautiful place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. James, and I can't quite make out your last name here.
Murez.
Murez. M-U-R-E-Z.
M-U-R-E-Z, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So I would like to say that I'm not opposed to street furniture, but I feel that there is a place for it in our community. I think that it is a great source of revenue, but I don't think it's fair for the street furniture to be put up in front of my property. And maybe that's the not in my backyard attitude, but that's not what I'm saying. You're representing the city. The city has property. The city has parks. The city has senior centers. The city has all sorts of real estate. They have a city hall here where they put up some of these shelters. Perhaps that's the place to put them up. But to put them up in front of my commercial property so they can take away my storefront, that's not fair. I've worked there for 30 years, and I've built a reputation in my community, and to have some outside company come and put up a kiosk in front and advertise some competitor's product is just not right. And I don't think that's fair to take that. And what they're asking to do, if I understand correctly, is take the public process out of it. I live in a beach community, so I'm lucky enough to be able to afford having a coastal commission looking over me. And by giving it this categorical exemption, my next door neighbor, right at the corner of Abbot Kinney and Main Street in Venice, we're living in an area where there's a lot of mixed-use projects. It's a very high-density area. They got one of these kiosks right in front of their front of their business. And had it been 30 feet over, it would have been in front of my property. I think that that's very wrong. It's very, very wrong for you just to say, well, we're going to make money off of this. Let's go put it in front of his store because his store is making the most money in the community and it has the highest visibility. That's not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Ira Koslow. After Ira is Gail Rogers.
Hi, I'm Ira Koslow. I'm on the Venice Neighborhood Council, and in the files there should be some notes or letters from the Neighborhood Council where we actually categorically ask that no street furniture be placed in Venice. Now, you're looking, the two things, don't want to discuss the pros and cons because we need the money in the city, obviously, but we want to discuss transparency and trust. It was very interesting for the gentleman to say how open the process is. Well, unlike private development, because these furniture is placed on public property, only the property owner directly next to that is ever noticed. They're not noticed to anybody within 500 feet. I was at the commission meetings, and we were not noticed about a toilet that was going to be put on our corner. In 2008, that's when we particularly came to and had Councilman Rosendahl actually take these things off the agenda. Residents and neighborhoods are not in the loop. The Coastal Commission agendas are noticed to us where we do see the Coastal Commission agendas so that we can actually go and speak before them on those issues. By bypassing the Coastal Commission, we will not be noticed on these issues. Trust. I put pictures of the placement. Now, there's one picture of the Park Avenue. There's a mural on Emily Winters. The neighborhood council spent $10,000 to make sure that the graffiti would be removed from that. That's where they were putting one of those giant toilets on there. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about the pros and cons later on with the alarms that go off, but they told us they were going to take them down. And also there are two emails where we got the Coastal Commission involved in this. And Chuck Posner, who's on the staff there, responded that it's up to you to enforce the fact that no coastal permits were issued on this. Therefore, we cannot appeal to the Coastal Commission because nothing was there. So there are two emails, I'm sorry to go over, two emails to look at with his responses and two pictures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gail Rogers. After Gail is Yuval Kremer.
Good afternoon. I'm a resident. I've been a resident in Venice for 38 years. I've also just retired from teaching in the public schools for 38 years, so yay. Okay, and I was the one that authored the motion in front of the Venice Neighborhood Council last year to declare our opposition to the street furniture program, and it was overwhelmingly approved. I gave it to the committee clerk. I sent a letter to the department. We have a letter saying that the Venice Neighborhood Council is in opposition. And there was also, I sent a letter to the Department of Public Works, so I gave them a copy of that. That was last year, April 4th, 2009. This program, the street furniture program, I quote, provides entertainment and information to the public. Now, I know they make billions of dollars, and then the city gets millions of dollars. Maybe it will trickle down to our neighborhood, 1,000 or 2,000. Notice the irony in this. They say, oh, but you can use this money for gang prevention. Well, there's there's a kiosk on the corner of Main Street and Abbott Kinney that has Tracy Morgan, who's a role model to young people, holding a gun. And then a few weeks later, there was an ad for movies called The Losers, where 3 people were holding guns. Oh, good, we'll use that money for gang prevention. A little irony there. And also, the Coastal Act issues involve the protection of community character and public views and coastal access along the walkways. And we don't have commercial corridors with high-rise buildings. So there's an assault on our senses in Venice. It's out of place in Venice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yuval Kremer. After Yuval is Kate Lutz.
Hi. I'm a member of the Mid-City West Community Council, and I've followed this for quite some time. I was curious, the document related to this item said that there would be a loss in revenue of $50 to $60 million to the city, and I think that was just pulled out of the air. I don't understand where they got that number. It doesn't mention anywhere in the document where they got the $50 to $60 million. The contract is capped as to the amount of money that the city can get. And, if they can't put them here on the coast, they can put them elsewhere. So I just don't get that figure. I would say that we should only allow bus shelters to be placed here, that the request to the Coastal Commission should only be for bus shelters because those are necessary. And they should be non-revenue generating bus shelters, which are allowed by the contract, so that we can control the content on those bus shelters, and use them for, say, to recruit police officers, so forth. Certainly not pillars, those really tall, monstrous things that are cylinders that haven't been installed yet. I don't want those installed next to the beach. I'm concerned about the scenic aspect of it. I'm concerned about tourism dollars being lost. I'm concerned about legal precedent, especially with regard to the pillars. Let's see. Toilets are questionable because they have ads on them. They're very large, so that would cause concerns with the scenic aspect. I'm wondering why number 1 on this agenda has been continued. It provides a context for this item, and the relevant people are here. So why hasn't it? There's no urgency, and Rosendahl, and I believe the second person Mr. Alarcon was referring to is Hahn. They're not present. Their offices aren't represented here. I don't know if Viacom J.C. DeCou is here. So I think this item should be continued, especially considering all the people that are concerned about it, and there'll be even more so when it goes to the full city council.
If you could wrap it up, please.
Yeah.
I just want to be consistent.
So I just hope that you guys continue this item so that we can also get number 1 and get some context for this. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Kate Lutz. After Kate Lutz is James. Oh, James already spoke on this item. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kate Lutz, and I live in Venice, and I see the street furniture that already exists, and one of my concerns is that the movie posters that promote violence and guns is a real mixed match for Venice. I'm agreeing with, if you have a lot of gang-related problems, you don't want to promote guns, and that's a lot of what these posters do. And you really have to think to give that permission to put up whatever they want, because there's not going to be any review committee what goes up there. I think it's a really important concern. In front of Westminster School and in front of the high school, there have been movie posters. One was Salvation with the robot and guns in front of Venice High School, and in the elementary school there was one as well. There's also problems with access. They're very narrow sidewalks, so if you're on a wheelchair, or if you're a mom with one of these big pushing carts for your babies, it's really hard to get by, so that causes traffic problems. I ride my bike a lot, and it's also visibility problems. And I think in general we have to stop this onslaught of advertising. We're bombarded by it in Venice. We've got it in the sky, we've got it on the radios, we've got the billboards already, we've got the bench boards that are already the current stands that support people using our bus system. And to add another layer of excessive information to get revenue, to me, is not thinking long-term. I agree with the people that spoke about beautification, and this already is a resort that attracts millions of dollars to our city. You don't want to start alienating people because it's presenting like the wrong image that we're here to commercialize. You want to see seagulls, you want to see dolphins, you want to see boats, you want to see the ocean, you want to see the sand. Go around these big signs so that you can really understand why you came here, because of nature. And we have to bring more of that back into our city and not at the expense of commercialization to another level. Thanks.
Thank you. Yvonne Guzman. After Yvonne is Jim McQuiston.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Guzman, Venice Neighborhood Council. I recently got elected to the Venice Neighborhood Council, and my understanding of our election was that my election to the Venice Neighborhood Council was to share information of what was going on in our community with the other residents in Venice. And what's happening here is I feel like we're being overlooked in the name of efficiency. We oppose having any kiosks, and we want to know what, when, where, if any, we have anything in our community. So again, I feel like we're being overlooked and that the information needs to be shared, and that we need to be able to give the community a voice and allow them the opportunity to know what's going on and what's coming up and who's benefiting and how they're benefiting. So please, if you could give us that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim McQuiston. After Jim McQuiston is Barbara Kahn.
Jim McQuiston, as you know, I've been on the Public Works Sidewalk Committee. I've been looking at something from a different standpoint, not particularly street furniture, the question of easements. As you know, most people don't realize that the property owners own to the center of the street. And in the state code, the easement that the city supposedly has or can get allows people to pass over their property. It says nothing about licensing out the property for other uses other than actually passing over the property. And so I went to engineering and I got a copy of their dedication. And the dedication has nothing in it which would give a license to make a commercial venture on the easement. So it's something I'm working on, how we are going to handle that. And I did want to mention it here because there is a difference between putting up, let's say, a bus shelter where the city doesn't get anything off of it, interfering with ADA requirements. There's lots of twists and turns to this, and I just wanted to let you know that it's something that's being looked at right now.
You, Barbara Cohn.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Cohn. I'm president of Pacific Palisades Residents Association, a community-wide organization. And I also am Area 1 rep to the Pacific Palisades Community Council, which is the coastal zone of the city of Los Angeles, the furthest west area of the city of LA, from Sunset to Coastline and to Palisades Drive. You represent the people who voted in the California Coastal Commission some 30 years ago, and I'm one of them who worked very hard to establish that commission and the provisions and CEQA. And I would not like to see those provisions being taken away by a request to have an exemption for street furniture along the coast. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So to our staff again, a number of speakers brought up the issue that should the city have this exemption, that they would not have an opportunity for notice or for the local communities to be involved in some of the discussions. Is that accurate or not, or should we be concerned?
Lance Awishi with the Bureau of Street Services. It's somewhat inaccurate in the sense that you heard Jim Doty mention that there's a very lengthy process for us to even get furniture sited, and part of that process includes public outreach. The way the program was established was that during the first 2 to 3 years of the program was when we were doing most of our public outreach. Since the program started in 2001, of course, a lot of that outreach occurred prior to 2005. We met with neighborhood councils, homeowners associations, as referred to by the local council office and as requested by others, even as late as 2008 when we were trying to still obtain additional permits. We continue to meet with neighborhood councils and homeowners associations on numerous occasions. And then through that mechanism is the way that we were hoping, anyways, that most of the community would be notified of the activities of the program.
And so what's the difference right now between, let's say, having this go through the Coastal Commission versus the city procedure? And is it the same type of public participation? What's different?
Let me speak to that. If in complying with the Coastal Act, if a coastal permit is required, in addition to the consultations that Lance described, then after that is completed, then we go into a formal coastal permit process. That would come to the Bureau of Engineering. We would send out notices to owners and occupants of property within 100 feet of the proposed installation, and we would notify persons and organizations known to have an interest in that installation. We would need to hold a public hearing. The Bureau of Engineering does not have a regularly meeting body within the Bureau of Engineering that would handle coastal permits, so every coastal permit hearing is specially convened and then reach a decision. The coastal permit decision is then appealable to the Board of Public Works if it should happen to be controversial. And then the Board of Public Works decision on the appeal is appealable to the California Coastal Commission should someone desire to do so. Any installation that was deemed a major public work, which is anything that costs approximately $150,000 to construct, would also need a second sequential permit from the California Coastal Commission, requiring city staff time, etc. The notification for that process is identical to the city's owners and occupants within 100 feet.
So now that process is it's an exemption. We're not going to go through that process.
We are suggesting that we get a formal exclusion from coastal permit requirements that would make that not a necessary addition to the consultation, coordination in place throughout the city.
Okay. And what is that process?
Once again, that involves every time we need to obtain a permit for a site or we're seeking a permit, we're required to obtain council office approval. And typically when we obtain, in order for us to obtain council office approval, a particular council officer will refer us to meet with a particular homeowners group or community group that is within a general area of where that site might be. And we've continued to meet with groups, like I mentioned, without fail. Every time we've been referred to do that type of outreach within communities. And we continue to do so as requested.
Okay. And so the benefits of not having, the benefits of having the exemption is what? If we could just summarize it really quick.
It conserves staff time. In this day and age, we feel that it is best to act wisely, work smarter, not more. And we feel that since the installations do not trigger Coastal Act policies themselves, we're not speaking to the merits of any individual installation, but rather whether installations would trigger a Coastal Act policy. We feel that it would be better to get an exclusion.
Financially, what does it mean for us?
Costs us about $6,400 per permit for staff to go through the coastal development permit process. So there would be a direct savings of that. There's the indirect effect of Coastal Act procedure being piled on top of the rest of the program that might be discouraging to the program, might affect potential revenues in the future.
It says here, failure to implement this category exclusion request will result in program revenue losses and would drop program revenue 50 to 60 million below the maximum that could be earned over the remaining 11 years of the program's contractual term. Can you elaborate on that?
I'll elaborate on that. That refers to our program, as you may know, does generate revenue for the city in addition to the provision of the structures themselves. The way the contract was originally structured, we'd receive a minimum of $150 million over the course of the 20-year program. That was contingent upon the city, of course, issuing all 2,500 permits for the new furniture sites. If we fail to meet the minimum 2,500 new permits, then our fees are reduced commensurately. And, of course, our fees are tied to a schedule, so if we do not meet a certain milestone within that schedule, then our fees are once again reduced to that particular level. So currently, as we stand right now with our existing permits, if we were to project that out for the next 10 or 11 years, we potentially will lose approximately $60 million.
So what I'm trying to understand is if we are excluded, if we get this exemption, we don't go through that process, does that mean more signs are able to go up, and that way, that's why we get the new revenue, or how is this?
Correct. It fits into the overall permitting structure of the program. And once again, I mentioned 2,500 permits citywide. Within this particular coastal zone from Pacific Palisades down to San Pedro, we are seeking approximately 120 to 121 permits, of which I believe 30 to 40 of those permits were grandfathered in from shelters that were actually placed in the 80s prior to our existing contract. So we're actually being asked to retroactively obtain permits for structures that have been in the on the coastal area for upwards of 30 years. And so that also plays into the
But isn't that a huge assumption to make, that just because we are exempt from this process, let me put it this way, we're making a huge assumption that if we go through this process, we won't get the permission on the signs?
It's a little bit difficult to explain the way the contract is structured, but in other words, if we don't reach all 2,500 permitted sites, of which, once again, I'm mentioning 120 or so here in the coastal plain, actually 90 new sites in the coastal area, that, once again, keeps us back to a certain milestone in a contract, and which is tied to the revenues. And if we stay at that particular milestone that we're tied at right now, in other words, we do not continue to obtain all permits, then yes, we will forfeit that type of money by year 20 of the contract.
Does the Coastal Commission have an opinion on this exemption, proposed exemption?
The only opinion we've gotten from the Coastal Commission is that the installations fit the technical definition of development in the coastal zone, and therefore, if it's development, it requires a permit, unless otherwise exempted. We suggested that they should be excluded. They said in order for the Coastal Commission to consider an exclusion, they would want an action by the City Council stating city policy that staff should apply for a coastal permit exclusion. So we're going through that process.
Questions or comments?
This is a horrible situation. First of all, staff, you've been put in a place to push a program that in many ways creates a lot of controversy in the specific areas that the signage is being proposed. And you're also being challenged to generate more revenue, which I recognize. But the big picture is that we have to protect our coast. And while you're speaking of values in terms of sign or location to location, 120 permits can have an impact on our coast. And so I don't know how the Coastal Commission, first of all, I don't believe the Coastal Commission would allow for an exemption.
But secondly, even if they did, it seems to me we'd be, I don't, as a council member, I don't want to be authorizing 120 permits one at a time. I want to know what the plan is. I want to know how 120 signs are going to match the best interests of the coastal community. And I haven't heard anything about that. I also believe that if we are going to get an exemption, a categorical exemption from the Coastal Commission, that they would ask for the same thing. They said, well, before we give you an exemption, we want to know, what are you talking about? Where are you going to place these, and what are they going to look like? Because the impacts are much more dramatic than just one sign. And if you do it one sign at a time, or one bus, what do you call them? Bus shelter, one shelter or one kiosk at a time, we'll have a whole hodgepodge of stuff that may or may not, and probably won't be consistent. I mean, the whole idea of having these kiosks and bus shelters was to establish some sense of consistency throughout the city of Los Angeles. But particularly in areas like the coast, it seems to me that we have to be particularly careful to not upset the beauty of the coastal region. So it's very challenging, because I know that and I like the chairman, do not agree that that going through the coastal permit process is a necessary will necessarily cause a demise of every single permit request. You're making an assumption that we lose 120 permits automatically, but we may very well get half of them approved or even more. I really think, again, that it hinges on what's the total plan, because I think the Coastal Commission is going to look at this more globally than sign to sign. And in terms of the content issues, I don't think that's the issue here. I mean, the First Amendment provides rights in that regard, and that is not the issue. The issue is, how can we work more cooperatively with the community? And I don't think applying for a categorical exemption without a plan is the right way to go. And if we had a plan, we might not need a categorical exemption. So I feel for you guys, because I know the pressure that we've imposed to try and implement this plan. The problem here is the same problem, that we had a lousy agreement in the first place, and we're trying to make it work. But having said that, that doesn't mean we throw all the other concerns out the window. The concerns about developing kiosks and shelters that are consistent with the needs and desires of the communities, that are consistent with the view of these various communities, that enhance them if possible, and provide a service to them as well. So I just have a tough time. And again, is there another way to get a reaction from the Coastal Commission as to what they might be willing to do here, or what they might be interested in doing, or how we can get? I mean, just for them pass it on to the City Council, well, that puts us in a very awkward position to essentially stand against the community, and we don't even know what the result is going to be. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
You would think there would be another way, but we attempted to meet with the Coastal Commission staff, and and we did meet with the Coastal Commission staff, but they were unwilling to discuss the issue. And your points regarding a plan and protection of the coastal zone are well taken. Would it help you to point out that what we are in fact proposing to do is to waive coastal permit requirements only for those installations that are on major highways, secondary highways, and collector streets in commercial areas. There would be no waiver should the city want to propose an installation that would, for instance, be on Oceanfront Walk or on a beach or on a coastal bluff where there is a vista point. These kinds of installations would definitely not be waived.
Any other questions, comments? Smith?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I think you answered some of these questions. I want to clarify for the people that heard their comments. They're not losing their right to a hearing, that there is a public notice system that still is in place. Right now, there's two, unlike anywhere else in the city. Everywhere else in the city's got the city system. In this particular zone, you've got the Coastal Commission as well as the city system. We're asking the Coastal Commission to exempt those, so we still just have the city system alone. So they'll be the same as every other part of the city.
That is correct.
Okay. And in that notice system, you notify the city council office of where you want to put it, and you notify the neighborhood council. Is that correct? That's right. So there's notice, and there's a public notice to the people who live right next to it.
That is correct.
100 feet. Now, in that system, and I've lived with this for 7 years, so I know it pretty well, Councilman Alarcon, Councilman Rosendahl, Councilman Weezar, whoever, has the right to say, I don't want it at that location, in which case then they have, is it 60 days or 90 days to find an alternative location within the area? Is that?
Right now, that mandate to provide that alternative location actually doesn't exist. We are just forced to look elsewhere if the council decides to deny a site, which is generally what we've been doing. If we get a site denied, we continue to search other areas within the city that meet similar type of requirements.
What happened to that requirement?
That was part of a ongoing discussion for a possible contract amendment to hopefully help us obtain the permits that were needed to successfully operate the program. Those discussions are still ongoing, and so there's been no definite establishment or procedure such as that at this point.
So the current system was the original system, which if we say no, then we've got to find another place to put it.
That's correct.
Okay, not within, originally it was going to be 3 alternate choices.
That's correct.
Now it's just, and we have to find an alternate location.
Right, it's the original contract with just mandates we look elsewhere.
But the 15 members of this council have the ability to say, no, I don't want it there.
Definitely, yes.
Okay. So those the notification systems are there. The hearing process remains the same as everywhere else in the city. Someone mentioned ADA, basically saying they can't get walkers by or whatever. We have to comply to ADA, and the ADA requirement is 6 feet?
48 inches, 36 inches federal, and the state disabled access requirements 48 inches wide.
So before any of these are put in, they must comply to the federal standard.
Minimally the federal. We
Minimum.
comply with the state standard, which is the more restrictive of the two.
Okay. And then the last point was on easement rights. The easement rights of the state law say that the easement right is for any public purpose the city discerns, not just for a sidewalk or...
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
That's a city attorney question probably. But basically, the easement rights that exist under state law is, in the 1911 Act, all that is, the city may declare an easement and use it for public purposes.
That's right.
And this would be a public purpose.
I believe so.
So I think that means all. So anyway, the bottom line is, we've had this system for 9 years. All we're asking for is in this particular zone, we're not doing a double system. We're doing the same system we're doing everywhere else in the city. If you're not being notified, you need to ask why. If you say you live within 100 feet and you didn't get notice of it, sir, you need to be asking why. Now, they notified the council offices. No.
Nobody knew. It was just put in. You can ask Councilman Rosenthal, his deputy director will tell you the same thing.
All right, well, I have a hard time believing that, but I'm not going to argue the point. I don't know. Okay. But he didn't ever call me and tell me what. Okay, tell him he's got my number, he knows where I am. But regardless, the systems exist. I can tell you only from my experience that in 7 years of dealing with it, I have not been happy with every location. I've told them I want to move, they've moved. I told them where they could put stuff in, they put stuff in. I've had the kind of relationship where I've got noticed every single time. As chairman of this committee years ago, we got a list every month of the notifications of where they were going, and We were watching very clearly because there are some council members saying no to everything, and yet they were getting the $100,000 allocation every year to be used in their districts, which was not fair. So we tried to change some of those policies. The point is, there's a standard system. We're not changing that system, except in this one zone. We're saying instead of double notification, you're going to get one chance at the apple instead of two. That's all we're doing here today.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I did mean to touch on, have we ever had permit or placement requests for the coastal area? Other than the ones you mentioned from 30 years ago, have we submitted, are we trying to move forward with these requests? So we did not go through the Coastal Commission before.
That is correct.
That's correct. And now you feel there is a need to get an exemption?
So,
yes.
Clarify that. Have we gone through the Coastal Commission before?
No.
No.
We've never have.
No, what brings this before is that the Coastal Commission received a complaint that there'd been an installation and that it constituted development in the coastal zone and would require a coastal permit.
So they've already declared that it requires a permit? The Coastal Commission has already declared...
Coastal Commission staff have informally informed the city that, in their opinion, this is development requiring a coastal development permit.
Do we have a city attorney opinion on that?
No, I don't have a
I see
formal...
the city attorney coming, so don't worry about that question.
Again, Ted Jordan, Assistant City Attorney, Public Works General Counsel. I am not aware of a city attorney opinion on that issue, whether that Coastal Commission permit would be necessary. And again, just so that the record is clear, the Coastal Commission has not stated that it is. Certain staff have opined that they believe it is. But the Coastal Commission has not taken that position, to my knowledge.
Then...
I will own up to the fact that I'm one of the staff that has so opined.
I've had as much frustration as Mr. Smith, because we've been on this committee a little bit longer than the chairman and had to go through these issues. But I would feel a lot more comfortable if we did have an opinion from the city attorney's office. And I would request that before we move forward on this, that this committee request that opinion.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's continue this item. Is there any timelines that we're up against? No. Let's continue this item. Ask the city attorney's office to write us an opinion as to whether you know what the intent is, whether it constitutes a development, et cetera. You know what the issue is.
And I assume it might have to be conducted in closed session, the presentation, I don't know.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, we'll look at that issue. If there are issues that we feel are appropriate in closed session, we'll schedule it. But I think certainly, if we render an opinion, those are typically not. Okay, thank you.
Because, I'm a bit, I'm torn on this issue because at one level I understand the need for additional revenue for the city, that we need the consistency to have one process for the whole city. But then again, I also believe in local control, and also I'm not quite sure what the jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission as it pertains to this, but I think the opinion from the city attorney's office will help guide us as to whether we believe that is a development or not. So that could be very helpful. Okay. So we'll continue this matter, and thank you. This is informative. Thank you very much. And thank you. How long can you get that opinion? 30 days, 60 days, 30 days? 30 days.
I'd say probably closer to 60 and 30. We're
45 days. I always do that here. I just split the babies. 45 days.
We'll do our best.
60 days. That's what you want? Okay,
certainly 60.
I'm sorry, ma'am. 60 days, is that? We didn't decide that. 60 days.
Yes.
Okay, we'll continue this item in committee for 60 days. Thank you. Next item.
Item number 4, continued from December 2nd, 2009, Office of Community Beautification report in response to motion Labange Hahn relative to directing the Department of Public Works, Office of Community Beautification to report in regard to a program that would involve the planting of vines to cover walls instead of repainting graffiti and related matters.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Paul Roch, Director of the Office of Community Beautification with the Board of Public Works. We did submit a written report. I assume that you guys have it. Very briefly, the Office of Community Beautification has planted vines in the past as a deterrent to several walls that tend to get tagged with graffiti quite frequently. We found that it's very successful as long as we're able to get the community buy-in and maintenance of those vines once we planted them. Back probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we did a whole lot of vine planting, and basically, found that in a lot of cases, although people had promised that they would maintain and water the vines, over time that really didn't happen, and the vines never really took off. So we do it now. Last year we planted about 250 vines that are going. Pretty much the way that we try to get people more involved is that we just don't go out and just plant the vines for them. We actually make the community become part of the vine planting project. So they do have a lot more investment in the survivability of the vines if they've actually gone out and put some sweat equity in. We do it through one of our contractors, Hollywood Beautification Team, and they'll actually go out and do concrete cuts and stuff like that as well. So ideally, there's already a planting area down there where we can put the vines up. But if not, and it seems that it's an appropriate location, we do sometimes cut the concrete to put the vines in. Usually it takes about, 3 to 4 years before the vines really take off and cover the walls. But in those cases where it's been put in and the vines have been watered and a little fertilizer put on them occasionally, they do tend to cover the area and keep it from getting tagged up and add a sense of greenery to the community. So it is a program that the Office of Community Beautification does offer.
So if somebody asks for vining, your office can do it, it's a matter of cost.
Right, and the cost isn't super high to do it, but yes, the answer is yes, we do.
Do you have funding for it?
We do have, we have the funding sort of as our regular graffiti abatement.
Maintenance?
The maintenance, we depend primarily on the community, whether it's the resident or the business owner.
But there's informal agreements that you enter into, right? Or no agreements at all, you just kind of say, hey, take care.
No, we do have a couple-page sort of agreement form where they, sign it and say they will take care of the vines. But obviously, if they didn't, we don't really have an enforcement mechanism where we go out and, fine them or anything like that if the vines die. But it's like a promise on their behalf that they will keep the vines watered.
Questions, comments? No. Will anybody from the Budget's office here? No. We'll note and file this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Public comment is what we have left. We have 3 cards. Jim McQuiston.
Jim McQuiston, putting on my farmer hat now. We certainly go for putting up Boston ivy on things like this, but there is one problem. Putting on my budget hat, I say, the Streets and Highways Code says that the property owner must, it says it shall, maintain that area, and they shall take care of all the graffiti and offall and all that sort of thing. So I'm rather shocked that the city would be using its budget to put this stuff up when most of the planning documents say that you have to have it and you have to catch your graffiti off in 24 hours. So that means that there's a great impetus to be putting this Boston ivy on practically everything, even chain link fences. And so I think that that should go in the record, that the committee is really wanting the property owners billed for any kind of work that the city does as far as planning the stuff.
Thank you. Mort Allen. Welcome.
I have to make a disclaimer. I am speaking strictly by myself, nothing at all to do with my friend that I advise, and strictly as a realtor for 48 years. I want to say that there's a situation, which I would have brought it up in number one. We are a real estate company that deals with a lot of older people. We do all our advertising on bus benches. It costs $50 a month. Every salesperson has their picture on a bench and all over, and that's the industry. All right, there's one company that's Bench Ad in Norman that's owned by Bill Giamala. You may know him. He owns the chain of delis. He started the first one. He was here. He left when he was 17. He's got like 50 delis around all the city of L.A. He owns Dot Printing, the largest printing plant in Los Angeles. He's got 2 million square feet of commercial building. He has owned Bench Ad and Norman Bench for 50 years. He's always had it in the city. He pays the city a percentage. 10 years ago, the city came to him and said, we want a franchise agreement. They made him spend $6 million buying all new state-of-the-art bus benches that are made out of recycled fiberglass that he was sent by a vendor the city wanted him to buy him from, okay? At the end of the 10-year thing, he said he had a negotiation period for another 5 years, okay? They refused to meet with him. They said that they didn't have the money or the staff to meet with him. All of a sudden, they came up with an RFP that is only CBS Deco can handle. They told him he's got to get rid of his benches. This RFP came up. The whole thing is like in a matter of 2 weeks. He doesn't have time to do anything, and they're going to bankrupt the man who's been here. And the thing is that the bus shelters were supposed to be equally spread out in the whole city. Now, what CBS has done, there's none in the poor areas. They've got Ventura, Wilshire. It's all they're doing. And like in my area, they're nothing more than billboards. They're not even benches there. Okay, they're going to take out all the bus benches and only have them in certain areas. And this guy, they won't meet with him. They won't do anything. The RFP, now, I have forwarded it over to somebody in Cooley's office because I don't think it's right to put the man out of business. But I think you should also know that CBS Deco has got a lot of illegal digitals, and they're suing the city. And so to bend over backwards for them, I think that you got to just look at the whole thing. Okay? Okay, so I'm done. And as the next city attorney, you got to watch it.
Thank you very much. Yuval Kramer.
I mean, I know Mr. Smith. I think Mr. Alarcon was there when we had that massive rush of installations of street furniture in order to get, I think it was $1.5 million. And I don't know if anybody ever followed up and saw if we got that. I think it was an advance. I mean, it's not like, I don't believe it was a bonus or anything because the contract was capped. So I'm wondering if the city received that money. Did it? Okay. The other thing this is budget related. I wanted to talk about wasted panels. The 3-sided packs, one side is for like a community amenity. They're controlled by the city or the city council. At least in my area, everywhere I've seen them, that single panel that's for the city is being wasted. And it's being, typically it's something that the same ad sits for months or years. And it's by the ad council or something like that. The city, it's an asset of the city. The city could be using that. I know the departments have marketing budgets. They have outreach budgets. The city could be using that and saving money, using those panels. If it's legal to do it, they could sell that asset back to the advertising company and get the revenue. So that's one thing I want to bring up. Also, on the two-sided packs, there's one near me. They were supposed to have a trash can next to them, and the trash can wasn't installed. They created the space for the trash can. Viacom CVS, the coup, would have to service that can, which would cost a lot of money. Instead, what they did is they gave a panel to the city. And again, it's being wasted. So I think that should be looked into because there's so many panels involved that we're talking about here throughout the city. My neighborhood council wants to use that panel for maps. I don't agree with that. I think, considering the budget crisis, that there would be a better use. I think tourists have maps, or they ask somebody, so that's going to be coming before our neighborhood council soon, so I'd like the Public Works Committee to address those extra panels soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Mr. City Clerk, Mr. Alarcon has been asked to be included as a yes on item number 5, which is the Stabilization and PLA Ordinance. You can make that adjustment. And other than that, this meeting is adjourned. Great, thank you. We have one more public comment from Mr. McQuiston. I apologize. That was public comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. McQuiston.
Okay. Jim McQuiston. Y'all have my facts, and also it's in the record. We got to do something about the measurement for lighting assessments. It was changed inadvertently some time ago, not very long ago, about 3 years ago, to measurement by area of property. And the state law says you're supposed to go by the front footage. We've always gone by the front footage. And it was caught when it was at the city council, actually in the council, after it had been approved without that change at the committee level. And because it was an urgent item, the council let it go through, but it was supposed to be reverted back to front footage, and it's still on area. And I put in a letter a year ago on it because it's been some time, and nothing has happened so far, so I wish you would schedule it.
I don't recall that ever happening, do you?
It's just eagle eyes that read these things to find out that things have changed.
I've been on this committee for 7 years. I don't recall that ever coming through this committee.
It came through the Education and Neighborhoods Committee because people were throwing when we redo the street lighting ordinances, you get a notice out, and people were just throwing them away. So they were pulling the street lights out, and people didn't realize that they should have done something about it.
That was the 218 notification problem.
Yes, exactly.
But it didn't change the...
And what they did...
change the allocation system.
It wasn't supposed to. But what happened was, we had a lot of hearings on it, and Councilmember Hahn had some very nice language gotten up by the street services and approved, and then it went to council because it wasn't a public works item, really. It was just a notification. It was only sent to Education and Neighborhoods. But when the actual thing came to before the council, when we read it, what's this about changing to area on the assessment? That wasn't in the thing. So this is something really to take a look at.
That's the purview of this committee only, so I'm surprised. We'll check it for you.
All right.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.